All right, we are back from surgery recovery, pretty much up and running again. So, missed some updates due to the holidays and the surgery, but welcome to 2017, and here's your weekly update video for progress on the game. During the holiday and during the surgical recovery, I did some kind of design work, which is not seen here, but designing items and other things like that. Basically when I wasn't on codeine. So, no development progress, etc. But I hit the ground running after getting back and recovering enough that I could kind of move around and put two thoughts together and so on. So it's actually quite a bit since we've skipped 2 weeks, and I feel like I'm getting better at this and maybe picking up the pace a bit. So I'm going to do some kind of live demo stuff of changes, and then at the end I'll talk a little bit about state of the business updates, a couple exciting things happening there. And again, as always, I caveat, we are doing it live, as Bill O'Reilly would say. So the possibility of bugs and unexpected stuff is happening, and I'm not scripting this. I'm actually just basically playing the game. So I'll point things out as we go, but weird things might happen, and we'll just deal with them. Some stuff, isn't totally cleaned up yet. So I'm going to launch into the game here, and you may notice it pause periodically, and that's I'm taking a look at the feature list to make sure I don't miss anything. So it pauses when I tab out right now, which is basically simulating how it works on the phone. If you go back to the home screen, everything kind of halts where it is. So a couple things here I'm going to show you in a second. This is basically a tray here that it's not like kind of auto-sized and stuff yet, but it's going to show you all of your explorers and their current location. So this is an update to the portrait system. So we're going to get a couple people going here, and they're going to be in different locations. And you're going to see I can jump from basically anywhere to view their state using this kind of omnipresent tray system. So to get started, I wiped the database, so we're doing everything from a clean slate here. I think, yeah, no items in the stash, no explorers, etc. So we're going to do it kind of ground up here. I am going to spawn a new person. So we just hired Lloyd Stevenson. I've actually switched out of using names auto-generated from the US 1990s census data. And it's actually, I'm using my own custom name database that I load, and it's randomly generating name pairs based on gender from that database. So I'll add more names to it over time. And the names come from a couple different sources, which maybe you can figure out after you've seen a few examples. There are probably, combination-wise, there are probably like 50 possible names, or maybe a little bit more than that right now. That number will get much larger as I just think of stuff and add it to the potential name database. So we've hired Lloyd Stevenson here. You'll notice on the menu right now, I have the name of the Explorer showing as part of the menu. This little bit is going to go away here once we have the art in place for the Explorers, so you can see their sort of features and there's visual differentiation. Because this label is just kind of annoying, and among other things, it overlays objects. So if I go into the inventory here, it's kind of like, it's very hard to hide it behind things and deal with the transparency and stuff. So it's pretty obnoxious. So this is just to remind you who's who if you can't tell from what they're wearing and their hairstyle and skin tone and facial features and stuff. More about that in a bit. Okay, so right now we don't see Lloyd Stevenson in this list because we're in the view where Lloyd Stevenson would be. So I'm going to generate someone else here. Here's let's see, Lapsang Ota. So Lapsang Ota, we're going to send her to the shop to pick up some items we need. And you'll notice here now that we can see Lloyd Stevenson is idle on the main ship. If we go check out Lloyd Stevenson, we can see Lapsang is shopping. We can jump around. And this works for exploration too. So basically you can very easily see who of my explorers are doing other things right now in a place that I'm not currently viewing, and you can jump around between them pretty easily. And it picks up in whatever state they happen to be there. So let's get some items here. You're going to notice that there's, before when I was buying things, it was like click over, click over, click over, click over. The client and the server were sort of optimistically in sync, but not really in sync. So I've improved the handling there. And that was actually quite a bit of work because there's a lot of client and server interfaces. but I went through and fixed that up so that they basically stay in sync now. And if for some reason you don't have the connection at that moment, you can't actually make the purchase. The game will operate fine without a persistent connection, because mobile devices are intermittent. But if you want to like trade items or do other things like that, the client and the server need to stay caught up. So you're going to need a connection for that. So eventually it'll basically, it'll spin a bit, time out, and you'll be able to try again if you can acquire a connection. But there are, some client-side things that you can probably do without a connection. So we're going to pick up some items that we might need here. Most of these cost 0 right now because it's convenient for testing. So we're just going to buy all the power cells and portal cubes here. We're going to get these gene patchers. And yeah, that'll probably be enough. And we're going to go back to the ship. So, they're standing on top of each other. So the positioning isn't like ideal yet. Now you notice Lloyd kind of moved out of the way. So one of the things I added to put a little more dynamism in it, and it's not finely tuned yet, but the explorers will, if they're not busy, periodically kind of move around and do things on their own. This is just to add some life to the game. So Lapsang is going to mess about with the stash. So as the number of things you can interact with in the game increase, things will happen. Like you'll be doing something with one explorer, another one will just kind of walk over and start messing with the assembler and stuff. Very simple. I'm using this animations. They're not doing anything in a game sense that you haven't authorized. They're just being independent beings that do things. So let's see here. What did I want to do? I'm going to stash a couple of these items in case we kill Lapsang Ota. And she's walking away right now because the busy flag isn't set when the modal's open. But some minor cleanup stuff that wasn't important yet. Okay, so we'll stash a few of those things. Do we want to kill her? Maybe we want to kill her. We'll see. But okay. So for now, we'll let her probably survive. There's a new item type in the game. It's this portal cube. So this is a dull portal cube here. You'll notice that the items are actually usable from the inventory now. So there's a whole consumable class of items that can have multiple effects. So a power cell here is going to restore 30 frame capacity. Portal cube is sort of a different class of consumable item. So there's just a power cell right now, but there are stat buff items and can create a range of effects. Things that would buff the power cell, things that would temporarily increase weapon power. Basically, any targetable object or explorer trait can be buffed by an item. So that does mean also that the explorers will automatically use power cells when needed during their adventure. But if you're back on the ship and you just want to recharge their frame capacity, you can just use a power cell in the inventory, and it'll do that now. So this portal cube item, the portal cubes are basically relic objects that power the portal device and create a portal that the explorer can go through to go on their adventure. And there's a bit of mystery about them, but you will be able to purchase/trade for them, and you'll be able to craft them, and sometimes you'll also find them as loot during adventures in certain scenarios. And the way the portals work periodically is you just go into the portal, you'd have an adventure, and it was scaled to the explorer's level, which was kind of a shortcut. The portal cube items themselves now have a bunch of invisible characteristics that determine the nature of the adventure. So what is the level of the content? Do specific types of encounters occur more frequently? Is it indoors or outdoors, which doesn't have a visual representation yet, but will determine encounter types and what types of monsters you see and that sort of thing. Notice Lloyd kind of walked over to where Lapsang was and then decided to get slightly out of the way so you could click on them. So some of that stacking handling is there, but it's kind of primitive right now. So we're going to send Lapsang on a little adventure here, which involves using the portal cube. So she's going to walk over. Ultimately, this is going to use the portal device and have more kind of animation about it. But she started a portal here, and the characteristics of this portal are effectively based on the portal cube that was used. So a lot of what you're going to want to do from a game perspective is find and craft more of them and try to determine based on what you've seen when you use them and the item description and other clues what the characteristics of those portal items might be so that you can optimize which explorers go through them from both the perspective of like, are they appropriate level to get good experience from the content? Is it too difficult for them? If you've just hired a new explorer to replace someone who got killed off or you're expanding the team, you don't want to send them on your high level content necessarily because they might be, in over their heads. So a lot of it is going to be kind of managing that from an efficiency standpoint. So as we were saying before, we can go check out Lloyd here. We can go back and check on Lapsang. We can jump around however we want. And the other thing to notice is that they're actually remembering their positions and locations now. So if we go check out, and I think there are a few bugs with that still, but if we go check out Lapsang and we return, here's Lloyd. He's basically where he was before and, doing whatever he was doing previously. So Lapsang Ota is returning, and she'll pop out when she completes returning to the portal from however far she got in the adventure. And then this portrait system does the same thing. If they die, it's going to red X them, show what killed them, and they're going to time out after a bit. So Lapsang Ota is back. She's gained some experience, etc. She doesn't have enough experience to level up yet, so we can't raise her stats. But just to show some of the item capabilities, I have this blue gene patcher here. It's an injector for a gene patcher that rewrites human DNA, has a blue icon depicting a brain with a light bulb over it. So you can see the effects of the blue gene patcher. This is going to increase intuition by 1. That's a permanent increase. So these are your standard, coveted permanent buff items in RPGs. So we're going to use a blue gene patcher. And you'll notice here now we have kind of a message dialogue. Lapsang Ota permanently gained +1 intuition. So various messages, including things that come from the server or item consumption or other effects, are actually going to stack on this message list here and fade out over time. So this was a big addition because it gives me a way other than just logging to the debug console to share messages with the player, which right now is me. So if we use another blue gene patcher, let's see, we want to do that. Oh, it's not letting me use it. Let me see if I can figure out why. Okay, I've broken her inventory, I think. Let me reload here. Let's see if it works now. Use the power cell. We use another power cell. We use the third power cell. Yeah, there we go. So anyway, okay, yeah, I screwed up the inventory somehow with the gene patchers. But as you use the items, the messages stack. And they'll time out over time. So if you're spamming a bunch of items, you can see all the effects, but they won't clog up the screen permanently. So there you go. So those are the consumable items, the portal cube details. You'll see it pause here. I'm going to check my list real quick. Yeah, so a couple other changes here. There is a new challenge type in the exploration. They're resource challenges. And so it's a challenge, meaning it uses an explorer's stat to check a success rate. And if they succeed, it's going to yield specific crafting materials. So resource challenges are a great way to get resources that you need to craft items that aren't things that would drop from monsters or enemies. There's also a shop restock event. So the shop previously would just reload inventory when the server rebooted. But now there's actually a timer running on the server side that will update the inventory of the shop, basically a restock, and notify the client. And conceptually later on, this will be sort of a habitat announcement, like, hey, we have new items in stock, etc. So you know when you can go check the shop to see reloaded inventory, which may be better items if your explorers have leveled up since and so on. So that's all dynamic now, and that happens on a kind of a timer system. And so I did the message relog, the improving of the client's server sync handling, the milling about around the ship, retained the positions, the name generations. I fixed a ton of bugs and made a bunch of minor improvements in different areas, probably on the order of about 50 little things here and there. Mostly improvements, thankfully, not mostly bugs at this point. So that's pretty good. So the kind of the next stage for this on the conversation. Yes, it doesn't track their Explorer now, but they periodically have conversations, and so I get to write a bunch of interesting and snarky dialogue, and it's kind of randomly selecting dialogue. There's monologue. There's also conversations they have. So periodically, the explorers will actually start to have a conversation with each other. So I'll leave this running, and you may see some of that happen. But there's normal conversation, which is the vast majority of it, and then there's actually rare conversation, which occurs very infrequently, both monologue and dialogue, and that will either be something that is like kind of a joke or a reference or a pop culture reference or something that I don't want to spam constantly, but is kind of a nice Easter egg, or it may actually be the explorer saying something potentially relevant, interesting, or insightful about the nature of the game or mysteries in the game or whatever. So if you happen to generate one of those, you happen to notice it, it may give you a clue or an idea, or in some cases mislead you slightly. So I'm having fun periodically when I need a break from typing code, adding more conversation. So ultimately the conversation. So here we go. Do you think there are any other habitats? Lapsang says, that's a good question. Lloyd says maybe they have better restaurants. So yeah, they'll have various conversations, and the dialogue differs from the main scene. When they're in the shop, they're mostly talking about the state of the shop or prices or economic stuff, including a few hidden really bad puns. So yeah, couple of things on the business side. So the LLC basically is done, and the next step is I need to register for tax IDs and do a bunch of other forms and filing type stuff. Unfortunately, the company that did my LLC filing didn't deliver the documents correctly. It was returned to them. So I had to contact them, and there's a bit of delay there. I had to contact them to send that again. So I'm waiting to receive all that documentation, and I can complete the registrations, et cetera. And then we're officially a legal business entity and a tax liability and so on. So that's great. The other thing that's going on, I've contacted a potential musician to work on a soundtrack for the game, so we'll see if that works out. He's currently on a vacation, but when he comes back, we'll have some conversations about that and see if we can't get the process of getting some music going. And then I've also started talking to a couple potential artists to do sprites, scenes, and other assets for the game. So hopefully I'll be commissioning some samples here where I pay them to do some basic sketch work, concept and design for the characters. And I basically determine, is this an artist I like? Is the style what I'm going for? And then from budget and schedule perspective, is it going to work out? So that's really big because a lot of stuff is sort of on hold, not from a mechanics perspective, but from a design and polish and content perspective. Until we have like actual art, actual scenes in place, rather than this crappy Photoshop stuff that I do. So that's really big, and that's taken some time and energy because communicating with them. I've had to significantly expand the design document. So basically, here's sort of a description of the assets, whether they're prototype phase or potentially future phase, art references, art direction, background information to make them make sense, etc. So it's really kind of taken over the design document in that respect. So that is quite long right now, extensive to give them as much guidance as possible. But hopefully over the next few weeks, I'll be running through those samples, maybe share some, but that probably depends on whether the artist is comfortable with their sort of sketch work being shared or not. But so that's really big. I kind of felt like based on the development progress I'm making on the game and the mechanics, there's obviously a ton more to do. But I'm getting faster at it and so on. I don't want to completely outpace the art and have a mechanically sound game and then just have to sort of, I could continue to expand it, but really be like sort of behind on getting the artistic part going. So that's a big thing that's happening now. So there you go, caught up on the game. Things that are kind of coming up next is adding more depth to the game mechanics, putting more of the content in, so it can kind of do balance testing up to level 10, etc. I'm not sure the order I want to approach this in yet, but we're basically just adding breadth and depth to the mechanics and the content now. on a weekly basis, while in parallel spending some of the time during the week on the contract side, working with the artists and commissions and so on. So keep an eye out on the Facebook page, the Twitter account. I'm a little bit more frequent with the Twitter account than the Facebook page, but I'll try to balance it a bit better. But keep an eye out there, and as always, welcome feedback, questions, comments, etc. Suggestions, any ideas you have, or anything you'd like to know about kind of the game and the progress, other than why I suck at graphics. So happy 2017, and we'll talk to you next week.